if you want to literally improve every area of your life, the one key foundational skill to develop is communication. You want to be a better parent? Communication. You want to have a better marriage? Communication. You want to be a better leader? Communication. You want to grow your business faster? Communication. You want to be a leader in your community and a positive role model for other people? Communication. If we're not focused on realizing that we're making certain really common mistakes every time we communicate, and we don't prevent or completely eliminate those mistakes, and we're going to hold ourselves back from being even more effective at communication. And so in this video, I'm going to give you 5 incredibly common mistakes that if you can avoid these at all costs, you will certainly accelerate your ability to get new and more opportunities, to be a person of influence, to make more sales, to grow your business, and to lead more effectively anyone that you're here to lead. So let's dive in. Number 1, did you know that one of the wealthiest individuals on the face of the planet, Warren Buffett, once said this quote, "The one easy way to become worth 50% more than you are now, at least, is to hone your communication skills, both written and verbal." Now, if you're someone that truly wants to accelerate your success and do big things and be great at sales or as an entrepreneur or as a leader or as a person of influence, then you already know that one of the most important skills, if not the most important skill you must master, is your ability to communicate. Now, for most individuals, we believe that we are just naturally gifted at communication because we've done it our whole lives. Well, just because we've done something our whole lives doesn't mean we actually do it as effectively as possible. Now, think about it this way. The way you communicate today was heavily influenced and shaped by the people that raised you, parents, other family members, the people you were around in school, friends, teachers. And so if these individuals that raised you or influenced you or you were around for many, many years, if these folks were not incredibly successful at communicating, then it's likely that you might not have the skill to the level that you need it to be at to give yourself the chance to have more opportunities, to accelerate your success and your development in your career, to get more opportunities and to be the person of influence to make the impact that you want to make. So if you want to literally improve every area of your life, the one key foundational skill to develop is communication. You want to be a better parent? Communication. You want to have a better marriage? Communication. You want to be a better leader? Communication. You want to grow your business faster? Communication. You want to be a leader in your community and a positive role model for other people? Communication. And so most people want to think about, like, what are the tweaks that I can make to get better? But the problem is, if we're not focused on realizing that we're making certain really common mistakes every time we communicate, and we don't prevent or completely eliminate those mistakes, then we're going to hold ourselves back from being even more effective at communication. And so in this video, I'm going to give you 5 incredibly common mistakes that if you can avoid these at all costs, you will certainly, I believe, accelerate your ability to get new and more opportunities, to be a person of influence, to make more sales, to grow your business, and to lead more effectively anyone that you're here to lead. So let's dive in. Number 1, the first common mistake is thinking that speaking is equal to communicating. So if you think you speak well, it doesn't necessarily mean you communicate well. Same thing for anyone around you. How many people have you met, they're like, oh, they're really great talkers, but you actually get in conversation with them and you're like, they can't communicate well. And it's not because they don't speak well or with power or persuasion or they're not convincing with the words that they use. But the problem is they don't do a lot of other things that actually would make them a more effective communicator. Because communication is not just about spewing a message or words at people. Effective, powerful communication is about being able to convey a message in a way that gets it to land with another person so that they at least consider it for long enough to see if it's a new belief they'll take on or information that they'll hold on to, or if it's meant to get them to take action. And so there's all different kinds of communication, as you can notice from what I just said. But the problem for most people is we think that, like, if I just speak it well, that's good communication. Now, there is such a thing as being effective at communicating through speaking, because that's effectively what I'm doing here on video. Is I'm doing my best to convey a message with my words and with how I speak without actually being in dialogue with you right here, right now. And so I do completely believe in the fact that we can be powerful speakers without being great communicators in a sense, but I want to help you to become a well-rounded communicator, because at the end of the day, your ability to interact with your communication is one of the most important things. So you can be a great speaker, and that's a great skill to develop, but if you still are not communicating as effectively as possible, it can hold you back. So mistake number one, we have to shift this belief. Instead of just thinking that, well, if I if I speak really well, that means I'm a great communicator. We have to shift that belief and realize that communication is so much more than just speaking words across the table or across a video to another human being. We have to be able to interact and engage with the other person in a way that builds rapport, trust, and relationship and helps them feel seen and heard, and that we care about them and the outcome so that they'll actually listen and take on our message when it is our turn and our time to speak. Mistake number two, interrupting a lot without purpose. Now, I still struggle with this at times. Like, I'll jump in because I get so excited in a conversation with someone, like, yeah. And then I'll, like, share a thought or perspective or opinion, like, yeah, but did you hear about this, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like, if we interrupt too much, and in fact, I'd actually argue that we should never interrupt without purpose. And by the way, I make that distinction because as a coach, you can actually learn to you can learn to interrupt with purpose for a specific outcome or intention. So like if I'm coaching you in a one-on-one coaching session and you're going on and on and on with a bunch of information and I need to cut it off because that's not the point of the coaching interaction. You're trying to create an outcome from coaching, and I feel as the coach that you're just sharing a bunch of random information. I might in certain circumstances interrupt you with purpose, but there must be purpose. But for most folks, if you're just in a genuine and general interaction and conversation with another human being, for the most part, we shouldn't interrupt other people. Like, you ever been interrupted by someone in a conversation? You're going on and you're sharing a thought, or you've got like this stream of consciousness going on and your ideas are just flowing out of you, and all of a sudden someone cuts you off? How's it feel? It does not feel good to be interrupted. It feels like what we're saying doesn't matter. Or even worse, the person isn't listening. And then you're like, well, have you been not listening this whole time? And so it gets really frustrating when you have other people interrupt you. And now certainly there's a lot more to this, because if we actually get frustrated by that, there's like for ourselves, there's a mental thing going on that we need to switch and reframe. But as the person that wants to get other people to feel seen and heard and cared for, we must not interrupt unless there's genuinely an intentional purpose with your interruption, which for most people in regular conversation, there's not. And by the way, here's the one case that I think there is room for interruption. I remember one time years ago at a networking event, and it was for my local college, or not my local college, the college that I attended. And I had already graduated at this point, but I went back because it was at a networking event that was kind of close to me. I was still in school. And so there's alumni that come back. You know, sometimes you get around certain alumni and they just want to talk about how amazing they are. Well, this guy just wanted to talk about all the amazing things he was doing and did not take a breath. So I sat there and listened, or stood there next to him and listened politely, because like at first I was like, oh cool, who's this guy? Like I want to learn from him, and I do want to listen, I do want to absorb, but like he just went on and on and on and on and did not stop. And eventually I like interrupted. Oh, that's great. Awesome. Look, whatever I did. But then I was like, thank you so much for talking to me. Great to meet you. And I got to go, whatever. I forget what I said. But I interrupted him and I left the conversation because he just kept talking at me without purpose, without like checking in. It was like he didn't even care about the interaction or communication engagement with me. He just wanted to tell me a bunch of stuff. And so I do believe that if someone's ever talking at you for a long period of time in a conversation, now, people talk at you a long time in a video because that's the purpose of a video. But if they're talking at you for a long time and you're just like, I feel like this person doesn't have the intention of having a conversation, they just want to talk at me, then interrupt and go somewhere else to someone who actually cares about having a genuine conversation with you. Mistake number 3. This is a big one that I've certainly run into and still run into and am still working on, which is thinking about what you want to say next. If we sit there in conversation with someone and we're just ruminating on like, oh, how do I want to respond to that? Or, oh, this idea came to me, and we're supposed to be listening to the other person, how are we actually in a conversation? Like, I'll tell you from my perspective, the times that I've got caught and I got hooked by what someone said, and now all of a sudden I'm just thinking about what I want to say next or how I want to respond, or like my argument for whatever they said, or whatever it is. Like, I just start ruminating on what I want to say, and I just completely lose track of everything that person's saying. And then, have you ever had this happen? They want to ask you a question or get your feedback on what they just said, and you're like, Sorry, I have no clue what you just said. I have not been listening for the past 5 minutes because I've just been thinking about what I want to say. And if you're anything like me, this is a really hard one because sometimes I'll think I've got such a great idea or thing I want to share, and I just want to hang on to it. And the more I hang on to the thing that I want to share, the less I'm actually listening to the person in the conversation. And so this is one I'm still working on and training myself on. But I know for certain that like if you get focused on realizing that whatever you want to say is subpar, it's not subpar, but like is secondary to what the other person is saying in an effective conversation, it'll change everything. Because I believe that I'm not saying what you have to say or want to say doesn't matter. What I am saying is if you want to have a great conversation with someone, the first thing you have to do is build trust, rapport, and respect. And if you want to make the effort, an intentional effort to build trust, rapport, and respect with the other person, then you got to care more about showing that person that you care about that person and listening to his or her thoughts or ideas and making that person feel seen and heard. And you cannot do that if you're just spending all this time thinking about what you want to say next. And so again, I'm not saying what you want to say isn't important or doesn't matter. What I am saying is that's what's superior to that is your ability to help the other person feel seen and heard, because that will build the tight connection necessary for you to be a great communicator in that instance. Mistake number 4 that people make, it's a very common one, is not asking questions. I've made other videos about the power of asking questions, but for some people, they don't even ask any questions. Have you ever been in an interaction with someone, in a conversation, no less, and you feel like, I just asked this person a bunch of questions. And by the time we got to the end, that person asked me like this many questions. 0. Asked me nothing. Didn't ask me a single question. How's it feel? You feel like they don't care about you. They feel like they're not interested in you. And one of my favorite books is by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a classic, especially in relationship building and building rapport and connection with other people. And he says, if you want to be interested, finish the sentence if you know it. If you want to seem interesting, what do you have to do? Be interested in the other person. If you want to seem interesting, be interested in the other person. So you need to not just learn how to ask great questions, but if you're not even yet asking any questions, you got to make this a priority. You got to be willing to figure out how to quickly turn it over to the other person. Now, the challenge comes when someone really is a question master, and that person you're in conversation with just keeps asking you great questions and is genuinely curious and interested in you. And you're like, man, this person's really curious and interested in me. Like, you got to find the moments to turn it around. Even if you just have to say, like, hey, you've been asking me a lot of great questions. I really appreciate how interested you are in me. But, like, I'm really curious about you, too. Can I ask you a question or two? Because, like, I'm just so fascinated and wanting to know these things about you and your experience. Like, can I ask you a few questions before we get back to maybe if you want to ask me more questions, totally fine. But, like, let me ask you some questions. Is that okay? Because if you just, for some people, like for me, dude, you got to work to ask me questions. Like if it's an interactive conversation, you got to work to ask me questions consistently, because I just want to ask you a bunch of questions. Typically, now if I know I'm getting in a call where someone's like, the purpose is to ask me questions to get feedback and to have me like share ideas with that person, that's different. Someone's like, hey, can I get your advice? And of course, I'm going to show up ready to share and not be asking as many questions, although I will ask a lot of questions just to lay the foundation and understand the other person before I share opinions and feedback. I do know for certain that, like, for some people, it's going to require extra effort to get in there and ask questions. But you got to be willing to do it. And if you're not willing to get in there and ask questions, then the person's not going to feel as connected to you. They're not going to feel that you're as interested in them. And if they don't feel that you are as interested in them as they are in you, you will not seem as interesting to them. Fifth and final one, by the way, I cover a lot of stuff about communication and becoming your very best in my book, Attract Your Potential. So go check that out. If you're interested in personal development and feeding your mind good ideas for tapping into your greatest potential or attracting your potential, if you will, the title of my book, would love for you to check that out. But as we get into point number 5, or mistake number 5, here it is. This is a biggie. Not leveraging the 93%. The 93%. Do you know what the 93% is? It's the nonverbal components of communication. So there's a study by Dr. Morabian at UCLA in the 1960s. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but the concept was how he was trying to study, like, how do humans most effectively communicate emotions from one person to the next? And he layered out 3 different components of communicated emotions from one person to the next. Words, tonality, physiology, or like facial expressions, body movement, things of that nature. Mostly a lot of it, I believe, was around facial expressions specifically. And so what we find out is that words account for 7% of the weighting of being able to communicate emotions from one person to the next. Tonality is 38%, and your physiology or your facial expressions makes up 55%. So very geniusly, I say that tongue-in-cheek, very geniusly, I call this the 93% because 100% minus 7% of words, everything besides the verbal is 93%. Your tonality, the way you use your voice, and then how you use your face, your body language, and things of that nature. So as you can see from it being 93% of your ability to communicate a message and emotions from one person to the next, understanding that your ability to communicate is way more than words is vitally important. So how much are you using your face? How much are you changing your tonality to match the message you're trying to communicate? And by the way, even if you're in the phase of listening and asking questions, can you still use your face? Can you still use your body language? Can you still use your tonality in the way you ask a question? Or like, oh, wow, crazy, interesting, awesome. Like, what are the things you can use that convey a message succinctly and yet powerfully without actually caring about the words that you speak? You use your face, use your body language, you use your stance, your posture. Are you leaning in? Are you curious? Are you like squinted eyes? Are you like, oh, well, yeah, tell me more? Are you like, are you blank face and don't care at all? Like, you can communicate so much with your face, with your body language, and with your tonality. And so I want to encourage you that if you're not yet focused on using the 93% of communication, meaning everything besides the words, really get laser focused on leveraging this because it can make a big difference in your ability to master your skills of communication. Because if you master the skills, let's go back to what Warren Buffett said. It's the one easy way to become worth at least 50% more valuable than you are today. Master the skill of communication, and I believe everything can change for you. You can basically write your own ticket, get any job or position or opportunity, make the sale to the right people, be a great leader, be a person of influence, make the videos, create the messages, speak with power and confidence. Like, communication is the difference maker. It should be the one skill that you develop this year to turn your big dreams into reality. And friend, whatever dreams you are going after, I simply want to encourage you that great things can happen for you. You must believe, you must have hope, you must just keep going. You must start now, you must take action, and you must just keep chipping away no matter what distractions are around you, no matter how much you might feel stuck or not making the progress that you feel you should be making. Just keep going, keep believing, keep seeing the big vision of the amazing future that you want to build and create for yourself and for your family. And you got to just never quit. You got to just keep going. And great things can and will happen, friend. Refuse to quit. Refuse to settle for anything less than your greatest potential. And just keep going.